Hi, welcome back to another installment of our Parables of Jesus. Today is the parable of the lost brother. And you'll recall, just giving an overall context for where we are in this parable, recall that Jesus, in telling the parable, he's telling it to a bunch of angry people. People who are really upset at Jesus. They're angry at Jesus because they don't like who Jesus is hanging with. They don't like that he's hanging with tax collectors and sinners and that all these folks are drawing near to him. And so Jesus sees that, knows that, and now he's talking to the grumps.
Mm-hmm. And of course, this is, I think we should be, beginning, scenes from last week, that kind of thing, kind of beginning our thing, previously on a road in Galilee, that kind of thing, because this is the continuation. This is the continuation of the younger son who has, asked for his inheritance, essentially saying to the father, "You are dead. I wish you were dead. Drop dead so that I can have my inheritance now." And then he goes off and squanders it in, living among Gentiles, finds himself with pigs. He comes back, the father accepts him back, and there's a big party. Mm-hmm. And so here we are with the older son now. The older son who has been here all along. The older son who was presumably in the field somewhere when all this took place.
I wonder if the older son is us, those of us who, in reading the first part of the story about the squandering son and everything, and the foolishness of the father, if this older son sort of represents us who were scandalized by the first part of the story. Like, what? Are you kidding me? The brother did what? And the dad did what? I wonder if, again, this older brother, in this instance, could be us, or anybody who can't accept the grace that the Father gives.
Yeah. Can you relate to the older son?
No, not at all. Yes, actually, the thing is, maybe today I can relate to the older son. Maybe tomorrow I'll relate to the younger son. The next day I'll relate to the father. It really depends, I think, the day. It depends on the hour of the day. I think the beauty of the parable is that every character that you encounter in a parable, and especially this one, is somebody that you can relate to at some point in your life.
Yeah, that's what I love about this, because I have seen myself as the young son who has, gone off and done something really, really stupid and said, what did you do? What are you doing? Come on, get with the program. But I've also seen myself as that older son who, I've been faithful. I've done all the right things. I've done this and this and this. Why do bad things happen to me when, I've been faithful, I've done the right things, why didn't I get a goat?
Right. Yeah, it's not fair. How many times do we shout, "It's not fair, God"?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's our prayer. The psalmists do that all the time. Why God, why have you forsaken me? Where are you in the midst of my time of trouble? We talk about the shadow of death, all of these things, these times when we feel so distant from God, but it's not fair. And, I think those are the times when we find ourselves, like maybe in the middle of the night, 3:00 in the morning, lying awake saying, "Okay, God, where are you in all this? It's just not fair. I've prayed. I've gone to church. I've done all the things I'm supposed to do. I'm not like that younger son. And I want a goat."
How many times have we said, "It's a good thing I'm not God, because if I were God, I'd be sending down lightning bolts," right? I mean, it's a good thing that when we say that, and again, I think that just speaks to the scandalous nature of God's grace.
Yeah, God's not fair.
Not at all.
And thank God, God is not fair.
Because we'd all be crisp. We'd all be bacon crisp if he was.
Yeah, I think,
right?
If God was fair, there would be so many things in my life that I have already done that would just preclude me from any kind of grace, any kind of forgiveness, because we are by nature sinful and unclean. We are in bondage to sin
and cannot free ourselves. Yep.
And there's so many times that, that grace is so undeserved. So thank God, God is not fair.
Yeah, I mean, for those who have heard me preach on this before, I've often said that God knows our inner sanctum. He knows each and every one of us in our inner lives. God knows the brokenness of our, he knows what's in our medicine chest. He knows the secrets we hide. He knows the secrets we hide from ourselves. And I always like to say in my sermons that there is nothing in your medicine chest of sins that is so heinous that God won't love you. And even the ones you can't even admit yourself, God knows it, and God still loves you. And that's that same grace here, that there seems to be nothing that shakes this dad's love for the prodigal son, but also for the grumpy son as well. I mean, look what the father does. He comes out and pleads with the grumpy son. I mean, what dad pleads with their son? That seems to be a violation of code.
Especially in the first century, I think. Because there was so much a sense of, where you fit in the hierarchy of the family, where as a son, you were absolutely subservient to the father, and it was your duty to listen, to obey, to be responsible. I mean, it was in covenant, honor your father and mother. It's one of the big 10.
Right.
And, and so that's how you act. And so when you look at the words of this older son, when he comes out and says, I'm just looking here, where he says, listen, for all these years, I have been working like a slave. I mean, this wonderful familial relationship that the son has with the father, this connection, this intimate connection of family, the older son has just thrown it away and said, it means nothing because I have been nothing more than a slave.
And now what was once a familial relationship is now a business relationship, right? The older grumpy son is willingly giving up a familial relationship to enter into a business transactional thing. Right. I've worked, I've slaved for you, you're my boss, I'm your slave, forsaking the father-son bond.
Give me my wages, and my wages should have been a goat.
Yep.
But no, it's like, that's gone. And so now, I think the irony is that now the younger son, who has kind of broken that relationship and was out of the family, is now back in. He's being called, the son, the brother. He's forgiven, all of these kinds of things. And now it's the older son taking himself out of relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, and yet I still think there's tremendous grace for the older son, though, in doing that, because look what the father says as he pleads with the older son. He says, "Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours." He's not saying what's mine now will be yours. He's saying it in the present tense. You've got this. I've already got it. You've got all of the things of mine already. What's the big deal? Almost like reminding the son, you have everything you need because I've given it to you. It's already yours. So let's celebrate that your younger brother is back again. You're not losing anything, older grumpy son.
Yeah. What's so fascinating to me about this parable is in different contexts, we end with the first son. We kind of end with those words, that said, this son of mine was lost and is alive again. He was lost and is found, and they began to celebrate. And we end with that younger son. It's almost like the older son is a little forgotten. Yet this part of the parable is so profound. And I wonder if one of the reasons we're not as familiar with this is because this is the one that makes us a little more uncomfortable, because it hits a little closer to home. I just look at this older son. What he's doing is, I think, what we see as the definition of sin. Sin not as the bad things we do, not as those little things, the sins we commit every day of our life, the actions that we take, but sin as a condition, that we live in, essentially in a condition of rebelliousness. We live in a condition of really trying to separate ourselves from God, trying to go it on our own, trying to claim credit for everything we do, rather than seeing God's grace, God's hand in what we do. And, so when we see sin, I always like to think of the definition of sin as what we do when we try to separate ourselves from God, where we build a wall between ourselves and God. We build a wall around ourselves. And when we build that wall, not only are we separating ourselves from God, but we're separating ourselves from everybody around us as well. We're separating ourselves from community. It's that whole thing about where the command is to love God and love your neighbor. Well, in sin, we kind of separate ourselves from all of that and just love ourselves. And I almost see that that's what this older son is doing. He's refusing to acknowledge the relationship with the father, refusing the relationship with the brother, but he also, by refusing to go into the party, he's refusing the relationship with the community. He's built that wall up, and all he can do is focus on himself.
Well, he starts that whole sentence with his dad, give me.
Give me.
It's like me. It's all about me,
Yeah,
Dad.
to me. It's very egocentric.
Right.
All about him.
Right.
Exactly. And I think we see that in that older brother.
Well, even Martin Luther said that his definition of sin was that being curved in on oneself.
Exactly.
Clearly, this older son is curved in on himself. Yeah.
So what do you think of the ending of the story? That ominous ending.
You know, it's on the one hand, it's troubling to me because I want this to be packaged in a neat, tidy way. I want and they lived happily ever after.
Don't we all? Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe it's good that it's not packaged so nicely for us. Maybe it's it's good that the box doesn't have a bow and ribbon on it, because that's not how life is lived. Life is messy at best. So maybe it's okay if the ending is a little messy. It's a little, you have to question and you have to say, wait, what's going on? Does this end in a good place for everybody?
Yeah, it's that whole question: is the son going to stay out in the dark, out in the backyard, listening? I can imagine this scene where he hears all the celebrating going on inside, and he's just out there stubbornly saying, "No, I'm not going in." Or does he eventually make the decision to go in and be a part of things?
Now, that being said, I've said that I don't think you can tie this into a neat package with a ribbon and bow, but if you look at the larger context of Luke's gospel, what's the big event that happens at the very end of the gospel that sort of changes everything? We don't talk about it much in Lent, but it is the Easter story. It's that resurrection. And I'm thinking, you've got in Luke 24, you've got the disciples on the road to Emmaus, and they're in darkness, and they're in this bad place, separated out from God. They're separated from community because they've left the others behind in Jerusalem. And lo and behold, Jesus doesn't leave them there. The resurrected Jesus comes and breaks bread with them, and their eyes are opened. And then Jesus goes right back to Jerusalem after the two return from Emmaus. He goes back to Jerusalem himself and says, "Here I am. Don't you remember it was necessary for me to do this? I'm here." So for me, it's the resurrection sort of overcomes, I think, even the separation of the Son. That's what I'm saying, and it's perfectly fine for somebody else to draw another conclusion, though.
Yeah, but there's so many things in this, so much depth, and every time that we, I think we approach this parable, we can find new things. So enjoy this week, enjoy the two sons, and looking forward to hearing your comments and your thoughts during the week.
Absolutely.
All right.
So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And God bless.
Bye-bye.